The boundless celestial sky stretched out in every direction, bathed in a radiant light that flowed directly from the throne of God. In this realm, there were no clouds, no shadows, only the glorious, all-encompassing presence of divine purity that enveloped every heavenly being. Among the angels who served in reverent silence, one stood out, a figure of unparalleled prominence. Michael, the protector archangel. His commanding presence shimmered with the intensity of 1,000,000 stars. His armor gleamed like the purest gold, and his face held the profound serenity of one who truly understood the immense weight of the responsibility he shouldered. Michael was far more than just an angel. He was the commander of the celestial hosts, the warrior of justice, and the sworn protector of all creation. One morning, as Michael approached the throne of God, a hush fell over the heavens. The angelic hosts watched from their positions, yet none dared to interrupt the sacred conversation about to unfold. "What troubles your heart, Michael?" God inquired, his deep voice resonating throughout the very fabric of the universe. With the humility that was his hallmark, Michael prostrated himself before the throne. "Lord," he began, "I come to you with a question that has been stirring in my soul. What would become of creation without you? What would we, the angels, be if we were not here to serve you?" God smiled, and his light intensified, wrapping around Michael in what felt like an eternal embrace. "Creation is the expression of my love, Michael. It is my will made manifest, a reflection of all that is eternal and true. You and the other angels were brought into being to watch over it, not merely to serve, but to protect. Your mission is to safeguard order, peace, and justice in everything that exists." Michael lifted his gaze, his eyes mirroring a sea of stars, an ocean of inquiry. "But Lord, protect it from what? Here, all of us are light. Can there truly be a place that light cannot reach?" And God, with a sorrow in his heart, remained silent, for he knew Michael was not yet aware of the trials to come. Michael fell silent, deeply meditating on God's words. He understood that the role bestowed upon him was much more than a simple mission. It was an eternal responsibility. In that moment, he grasped that his place in the celestial kingdom was not just as a warrior, but as a guide for the angels and for those beings who, at that time, did not yet exist. As he departed from the throne, Michael was met by some of his angelic brethren. Gabriel, the messenger, greeted him with a warm smile. "You seem lost in thought, Michael." Still reflecting, Michael nodded. "Yes, Gabriel. God spoke to me of our role in creation, of our responsibility, and he mentioned that not everything will be light. That is something I cannot comprehend. Is there truly anything that can stand against the light, or even come close to challenging it?" Gabriel looked at him intently, and for a fleeting moment, a subtle tension filled the air. "The light of God is singular, Michael. It is the very source of all existence, giving life to everything we know and all that is yet to be born. But that doesn't mean darkness is non-existent. If there were no darkness, how would we ever recognize the value of the light? Without a shadow, there can be no contrast, and the light itself would seem to fade into nothingness." Michael's brow furrowed. "I understand the concept, but how can something like darkness exist within the kingdom of light? Could it be that one day this darkness will seek to spread beyond its place and shatter the order God has established?" Gabriel sighed, his wings of light shimmering softly. "That is a profound question, Michael. Darkness is not a direct enemy of the light, but rather an absence of it. However, it can certainly attempt to challenge it. This is all part of the divine plan, a test that all of creation must endure. Our duty is to remain steadfast, as we have always been, and to protect what God has established. Michael nodded slowly, yet his heart remained filled with questions. And what do we do when the darkness begins to defy not only the light, but the very will of God? What is our role when those who have been created free choose to walk into the shadows? Gabriel offered a faint smile, but his tone was grave. That is precisely what we must protect, Michael. Free will. Our task is, and always will be, to protect and to lead by example. The love and justice we defend will always be present, and even though the darkness will try to rise, Michael stood in silence, pondering his brother's words. At times the light seemed so absolute, so perfect, that he couldn't imagine how anything in the universe would want to diminish it. But he understood what Gabriel was telling him. Darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was an opportunity for the light to shine even more brightly. Creation itself hinged on the decisions that every being, every creature would make. Despite Gabriel's comforting words, Michael couldn't shake a persistent feeling of unease. He knew something was on the horizon, something that would put the angels themselves to the test. In his heart, Michael sensed that the coming struggle wouldn't just be against external forces, but against the very hearts of those created to serve. What will happen if one of us falls? Michael asked, looking at Gabriel with utmost seriousness. Gabriel met his gaze, his face serene yet filled with wisdom. That I do not know, Michael, but that is also the greatest test. If one of us should fall, it does not detract from the perfection of the Creator. It is simply an opportunity for others to rise up and continue the fight. Michael took a deep breath, the weight of his mission settling upon his shoulders like a heavy suit of armor. He knew that the kingdom's creation, though perfect in its design, would soon be threatened not just from without, but from the very nature of the beings God had created to protect it. And he, Michael, had to be the first one ready to face that threat. Chapter 2. The Rebellion of Lucifer. For eons, the celestial heaven had been a realm of unblemished peace and light. Yet, deep within this harmony, Michael sensed a growing tension, like a single thread of shadow slowly weaving its way through the gold of the stars. Something was about to happen, something no celestial being had ever anticipated. The stability God had granted the universe was beginning to fracture. In the vast halls of heaven, in the highest corners where only those closest to God's throne could dwell, whispers laden with a subtle discontent began to circulate. Lucifer, one of the most brilliant and revered angels, had started to question, to challenge. He was often found in private conversations with other angels, his voice soft yet persuasive, planting doubts and sowing the seeds of ambition. Michael had noticed the restlessness, the murmurs among the angels. Some, like Gabriel, believed it was nothing more than a passing phase, a momentary flicker of doubt. But Michael, whose intuition had always been as sharp as his sword, couldn't shake the feeling that something much deeper was brewing. One afternoon, as he watched the horizon of light, another angel approached him, his face pale with worry, bearing news that chilled Michael's soul. "Michael," he exclaimed, "Lucifer has spoken openly. He has gathered many of our brothers and has declared that we should seize what is rightfully ours, that heaven should be under our rule, not just God's." Michael tensed. "How does he dare?" he murmured, though his voice remained steady. "What is he planning? To defy God, the Creator himself?" The answer wasn't clear, but something inside him knew that Lucifer's rebellion was no mere disagreement. It was the dawn of something far darker. The celestial hosts were not only warriors, but also guardians of balance. If even a single angel fell, the entire equilibrium could collapse. One night, while the celestial sky blazed with its unwavering light, chaos erupted. The rebellion Michael had feared became a terrifying reality. Lucifer, his voice booming through the air, called upon the angels who followed him to rise up in arms against God. "The time has come to take control, my brothers," Lucifer proclaimed, his determination making the heavens tremble. "We angels are the true inheritors of this kingdom. God has given us everything, but now we must govern ourselves. It is time to ascend, not to serve." The fallen angels, those who had succumbed to the doubts sown by Lucifer, followed him without hesitation. But many, many more remained loyal, Michael among them. The archangel knew this was not a fight for power, but for the very survival of the celestial order. If Lucifer were to prevail, everything God had created, everything that had been built, could be lost forever. With a cry that echoed like a clap of thunder, Michael raised his sword of light. "I will not allow darkness to corrupt the kingdom of God. Who is like God?" he exclaimed, his voice clear and resolute. The war that ensued was unlike any other. Heaven, once a place of pure beauty, was transformed into a battlefield where angels and their fallen brethren clashed with uncontrollable fury. Swords of light met shadows of darkness in a blinding spectacle of flashes and chaos. Michael, as leader of the celestial hosts, came face to face with Lucifer, once the brightest of all angels. The battle between them was not only physical, but spiritual. Every strike from Michael represented divine justice. Every move by Lucifer was an insurrection against all that was sacred. "Lucifer," Michael said, his eyes blazing with the purity of heaven, "you have strayed from the path. There is no place for you here among the angels of God. Your pride has blinded you." Lucifer, with a twisted smile, responded in a voice as cold as ice. "You don't understand, Michael. We fight not for darkness, but for the right to be free. You will remain the faithful servant, as always, while we ascend. God has limited our potential, and it is time we take what belongs to us." Michael raised his sword, which now shone with the light of 1,000 stars. "Your fall is inevitable, Lucifer. No matter how much you desire power, there is nothing greater than the light of God." The struggle raged on for what felt like an eternity. Lucifer and his followers were powerful, but Michael and the hosts loyal to God fought with an unbreakable faith. The light was not just an energy, it was truth itself, and that truth was on the side of those defending God's creation. Finally, in a last cataclysmic confrontation, Michael and Lucifer clashed in a combat so fierce that the stars themselves seemed to tremble. Michael, channeling all his power and valor, landed a decisive blow, defeating Lucifer and his followers. But the victory was not without sacrifice. Many angels fell in the battle, angels loyal to Lucifer, who shared his ideals and desires. A third of the angels of heaven were dragged into the abyss alongside Lucifer, condemned to wander in eternal darkness. And heaven, though restored, would never be the same. But Michael knew the fight was not over. The universe's balance had been restored, but the price had been steep. With the battle won, Michael stood alone on the field of war, surveying the celestial ruins. Heaven, though bright once more, bore the scars of the conflict. In his heart, Michael knew that although victory had been achieved, the cost of freedom was a constant reminder of the fragility of the divine order. Evil will not surrender so easily, Michael thought. If a seed of rebellion has once grown in the hearts of angels, what will stop it from growing again? In that moment, as the celestial hosts began to rebuild peace in the kingdom, Michael understood that his role was now far more than that of a warrior. He was the guardian, the protector, the one who had to maintain the balance not only in heaven, but in all the worlds God had created. The rebellion of Lucifer and the fallen angels had been defeated, but the war, in many ways, was far from over. Michael, with the sword of justice in hand and his heart filled with the wisdom of God, knew his mission would never truly end. As leader of the celestial hosts, his duty was to uphold the light against the shadows, to be the eternal guardian of God's kingdom. The battle for purity and truth would continue, and Michael, the protector archangel, would always be ready to defend what was just and true. Chapter 3. The Creation. Michael found himself once again in the same sphere of light, surrounded by the glory of God's throne. Before him stood Jesus, his Son, his reflection in creation. Together, the three observed what was about to unfold. A new creature was to be created, a being with free will, capable of choosing between good and evil, between light and darkness. A creature made in the image and likeness of God, yet with the liberty to decide its own destiny. "It is time," said God, with a voice that resonated in the soul of all present. "Today, I will give life to a new form of being. This will be the one who carries with them not only the gift of creation, but also the challenge of choice." Michael watched in silence. He knew the creation of man was no small thing. He had witnessed every divine work, from each star being born in the vastness of the cosmos to every celestial being taking shape. But this was different. Man would be special, for he would not only be part of creation, but would also have the capacity to reject it. They were beings capable of decision. God, with a gesture of his hand, formed Adam, the first man. He was perfect in his creation, with a light that reflected the very glory of God, though in a more terrestrial form. At first, Adam was alone. His body was a form of clay, still lacking the spark of life. "And from me, life," God said, breathing his divine breath into Adam, giving him life. The man awoke, his eyes opened, and for the first time, he saw the world that had been created for him. Michael, in his role as protector and leader of the celestial hosts, looked on with fascination. This new creation would be his responsibility. His task as a guardian would be to protect this new being, but also to watch over his free will, a gift that was as powerful as it was perilous. God, knowing the importance of this new creation, formed a perfect garden for Adam, Eden. In it, the trees bore abundant fruit, and the waters ran clear and crystalline. It was a paradise, a place of peace where Adam could live in communion with nature and with the will of God. "Of all that I have created, this place will be your home," God said to Adam. "Here you can live in peace, enjoy creation, and grow in wisdom. However, there is something you must know. Everything I have created, including you, has a purpose, and that purpose is to choose, to decide whether to follow my path or not." Michael watched attentively, his mind alert. He knew that the capacity to choose could be both a blessing and a curse. The temptation to reject God, to follow a different path, was not something to be overlooked. The peace of Eden, however, was not destined to last forever. God had given Adam a clear command. "From every tree in the garden you may eat, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for on the day you eat from it, you will certainly die." But Michael, as the protector, couldn't help but feel a growing sense of disquiet. Creating a being with free will was not a simple matter, for within the very freedom Adam possessed lay the possibility of the fall. Something deep inside him warned that temptation was lurking, that one day someone or something would try to lead humanity astray from the right path. It was then that the inevitable happened. In the center of Eden, where the tree of the knowledge of good and evil grew, the serpent appeared, a creature unlike any other. Though its external form seemed harmless, Michael knew its nature was entirely different. The serpent was Lucifer, who, after being cast out of heaven, had found a new way to sow darkness into God's creation. The serpent, observing Eve, the first woman created by God to accompany Adam, approached her with a soft, deceptive voice. "Why fear the tree of knowledge?" the serpent whispered, its voice laced with venom. "Is it not an act of wisdom to taste what God has forbidden you? You will not die. Instead, you will be like him, knowing good and evil." Michael, watching from a distance, felt a knot of worry tighten in his chest. He knew the serpent was the manifestation of Lucifer, and what was happening was not just a conversation. It was a trap. The serpent wasn't seeking dialogue. It was seeking to deceive, to plant the poison of disobedience in the hearts of humans. Michael, though ever faithful to the divine will, couldn't help but feel troubled. His mission had always been to protect creation, and now he was watching as the serpent tried to corrupt its purest element, man's free will. The archangel felt a powerful impulse to intervene, to stop Adam and Eve from yielding to temptation. "Oh, Lord," Michael murmured in prayer, his voice filled with anguish. "To allow the serpent to plant its lies in the hearts of your children is a grave risk. If disobedience takes hold of them, everything you have created could be undone. We must not intervene." God, in his infinite wisdom, replied with serene peace. "Free will is a gift, Michael. We cannot take it away, not even to protect them. They must choose for themselves, for only in their choice can their love for me be reflected." Michael, though he understood, could not escape the feeling that the fall was inevitable. The temptation of Lucifer, disguised as wisdom, was too great. Adam and Eve, like any creature with free will, had to face their own test. Eve, tempted by the serpent, took the fruit from the forbidden tree and ate it. Then she gave it to Adam, who also ate. In that instant, everything changed. Eden, which until that moment had been a paradise, was filled with an invisible but palpable darkness. The purity of the first humans was shattered. The light that surrounded them began to fade, and a profound emptiness invaded them. Michael felt the fall of man in his very soul. Disobedience had sown the seed of sin, and though Adam and Eve could not see the magnitude of what they had done, he understood it completely. The perfect love of God had been rejected. The test of free will had been met with sin. God, in his infinite justice, could not ignore what had happened. "Adam, Eve," he said with a solemn voice, "why did you disobey my command? Why did you choose the path of darkness when I desired only the best for you?" The consequence was unavoidable. Adam and Eve were expelled from Eden, condemned to live in a world that would no longer be perfect. However, God, in his infinite mercy, gave them a promise. One day, a Savior would be born from among humanity, one who would restore the lost path. Michael observed everything from his position, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He had seen the creation of humanity, the purity with which God gave them life, and he had also witnessed their fall. Despite the pain, Michael knew the story did not end there. The struggle for the soul of man was just beginning. God's mercy would always have an answer, and Michael, as their protector, would always be ready to guide them, to defend them, and to fight for their return to the light. Chapter 4. Michael, the Protector Archangel. As time passed, humanity multiplied across the face of the earth. Nations grew and empires rose. God chose a people for himself, named Israel, and told Michael to keep a watchful eye on them, for they would need protection. And Michael assented. The people of Israel had been chosen by God from time immemorial. Starting with Abraham, God established a covenant with the descendants of this patriarch, promising they would be his chosen people, through whom all the nations of the earth would be blessed. But this covenant was not without its challenges. Throughout the centuries, Israel was constantly attacked, persecuted, and threatened by various nations. Yet always, in their darkest moments, Michael was there as the protective hand of God. Over the centuries, I recall, I have witnessed countless battles, but none quite like this one. The invasion by Sennacherib, king of Assyria, found me facing one of my most challenging missions. The people of Israel, under the leadership of King Hezekiah, were surrounded. Jerusalem, their last fortress, seemed on the verge of collapse. The threat was immense. Their army was vast, and their forces seemed unstoppable. When King Hezekiah cried out to God for mercy, I was nearby, watching with a mixture of calm and concern. The pain of seeing my people encircled by the enemy was palpable, but I knew that in moments like these, divine intervention was not just necessary, but inevitable. That night, as the sun set and tension filled the air, I heard the voice of God, as clear as thunder. He had heard the plea of his people. This was not just a battle for the lands of Israel. It was a fight for the very promise he had made to his children. I spread my wings, calling the celestial hosts, and in an instant I descended upon the camp of the Assyrians. Like an unstoppable storm, the force of divine justice was unleashed. In a single strike, 185,000 soldiers were struck down in the blink of an eye. The army of Sennacherib, which had appeared invincible, was left in ruins. The hand of God is greater than any human sword, I thought, as I surveyed the devastation. Those who dared to challenge God were defeated without a single Israelite sword being raised. This act served as a clear reminder to all the peoples of the earth. God is the protector of Israel, and no one can defy his will. Another crucial intervention I witnessed occurred when the three young Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refused to bow to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar. The Babylonian king's decree was clear. Disobedience meant being cast into the fiery furnace. What impressed me was not just their bravery, but their unwavering firmness in their faith. Despite the threat of death, these faithful servants of God trusted that even if he did not deliver them, he would still be their Lord. When the three were thrown into the blazing furnace, their faith intact, my spirit soared. I could not allow their lives to be extinguished in the flames. I was sent, along with the celestial hosts, to surround them. The raging fire did them no harm. As the flames roared around them, a presence of peace enveloped them. "Look!" exclaimed King Nebuchadnezzar. "Did we not throw 3 men into the fire? But I see 4, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." That was my intervention, my protection in that moment. I was there as the protector of the faithful of Israel, defending not only their bodies, but their faith in the one true God. The power of light and divine justice could not be overcome, not even by the flames of the world's most powerful king. In the end, the young men emerged unharmed. without even a trace of smoke on them. And Nebuchadnezzar, seeing the glory of God, praised the Creator. Throughout the centuries, Israel was scattered, exiled and persecuted. As their protector, my presence was often more than just a visible act in battle. Sometimes it was a whisper in the wind, a guiding light for those walking in darkness. During the diaspora, when the Israelites were dispersed across the globe, some felt abandoned. The people of Israel suffered persecution under empires like the Babylonian, the Roman, and many others. But in every persecution, in every invasion, my mission remained constant: to protect the children of God. Though my presence wasn't always as evident as in the battle against the Assyrians, I was there at every crucial moment. I particularly remember the dark times when the people of Israel were taken captive, when the sun seemed as if it would never shine again. My heart broke to see them, but I also knew that God's promise would not be broken. My intervention in those times was both spiritual and tangible. I guided those struggling to survive, inspired those who needed to maintain their faith amidst the shadows, and always reminded the people of Israel that their restoration was part of the divine plan. The book of Daniel also speaks of a future time, a time when the people of Israel would be in grave distress. The 12th chapter describes a period of tribulation unlike any before it. This moment, marked by desperation and hopelessness, will be one of my most significant interventions. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. As the protector of Israel, my mission in this time will be more crucial than ever. I will be there in the darkest moments, fighting against the forces of evil that will rise against the people of God. The purpose is clear. Israel will be delivered, and although the enemy will be powerful, victory is assured under God's direction. Not all moments of my intervention are as visible as the great battles of history. Sometimes my work is quieter, more internal, protecting those in the constant spiritual struggle. The faithful of Israel, who have been persecuted, scorned, and stripped of everything, find in my presence a constant refuge. In times of darkness, when the people of Israel seemed lost, my role as a spiritual protector is crucial. I help to strengthen the faith of those who, in their pain and suffering, need reminders that they are not alone. I am the protector who defends the faith, who keeps hope alive in the hearts of believers, reminding them that God's promise to Israel still stands. Chapter 5. The dispute between Michael and Lucifer over the body of Moses. In a remote and hidden place, far from the reach of human eyes, lay a secret piece of ground, a tomb without a name, without any trace to indicate its significance. In the heart of this vast darkness, two presences confronted each other, their forms barely outlined by the faint moonlight. A radiant and majestic figure stood upon the arid soil. Michael, the archangel, the great prince, had been summoned to this place. His imposing wings remained folded, but his fixed gaze and upright posture reflected the gravity of his mission. Facing him, a dark shadow, twisted by malevolence, awaited his move. It was the accuser, the Prince of Darkness, who had come to claim something that did not belong to him. Michael had witnessed many battles, fought in celestial wars, and defended creation itself. Yet, this was a different kind of battle. There were no swords or war cries, only a silent struggle for something far beyond what mortals could comprehend: the body of Moses. The voice of the adversary shattered the night's silence. It was deep, resonant, like an echo of centuries of darkness. "The body of Moses is mine, Michael. God buried him in secret, but that doesn't mean he is beyond my reach. I have always known his corpse holds something that it shouldn't, a soul that has left the earth, but can still hold influence. If you hand it over to me, I will use it, and you will be powerless to stop me." Michael, undaunted, replied with a calm that only a divine being could possess. "It does not belong to you, Satan. The body of Moses is sacred, as is everything that pertains to the will of God. You have no power over what God has decreed. No matter how many times you try to corrupt it, what is in his hands will not fall into yours." A long silence settled, but the air was thick with tension. The echoes of the story of Moses, the man chosen by God to free his people, his death on the summit of Moab, just short of seeing the promised land, and the mysterious way God buried him so no one knew the location, all seemed to bear an inexplicable weight in this confrontation. The adversary moved, taking a step toward Michael. His dark form blurred into the shadows, but his voice was clear and venomous. "Why such zeal for a mere body? Moses was great, yes, but his time has passed. Do you think his remains still hold any value? Or do you fear that what he represented could be used for something greater, something darker? Do you still fear that his story could alter the course of things?" Michael looked at him steadfastly, though the temptation to respond, to seek a direct confrontation, was strong. He knew that in this moment, judgment was not his to make. He could not act on his own will. He was only following God's command. The archangel, firm in his mission, raised his voice to assert his position. Moses was chosen by God, not so his remains could be used as a trophy, but so his example would live on for generations to come. This body holds the end of an era, the testament of a divine covenant, and though you try to corrupt it, it will never be yours. God guards it in his memory and in his eternal plan." The adversary smiled, but it was a smile that did not reach his eyes. On his lips, mockery and rage mingled. "You are always so faithful, Michael, so certain in your mission. But remember this, even angels are not immune to the tests God sets for them. This is a test for you as well. Do you truly believe you can maintain this balance? Do you honestly think that in the end, you and your hosts can preserve the purity of everything God has created? You are not the master of the will of men. Have you forgotten, Archangel? The fall of the angels was only the beginning." Michael showed no sign of wavering. The adversary could speak with his charms and his shadows, but Michael understood something his enemy never would. It didn't matter what he said. What truly mattered was what God had decreed. And in this case, God's will was clear. "I am the master of nothing that is true, but I am in the service of the one who is everything, and this body will be protected. What is sacred, what has a divine purpose, will not fall into your hands." The battle was not physical, but spiritual. The confrontation over the body of Moses was, in many ways, a battle for the very soul of humanity. What would happen if the adversary gained access to Moses' remains? He could have used that power to corrupt the memory of Israel's liberation, to twist history itself. But Michael knew that while evil might try to manipulate history, the truth could never be permanently distorted. Michael took a step forward, extending his hand toward the adversary. A glow of light emanated from his being, illuminating the darkness that surrounded them. In that instant, the presence of God became so palpable that the shadows dissipated, if only for a brief moment. "The Lord rebuke you, Satan." Michael said, his voice filled with divine authority. A clap of thunder echoed from the heavens, and the adversary, who had been advancing with confidence, stopped dead in his tracks. Something invisible pushed him back, as if an indescribable force was pressing upon him. The air grew dense, as if the entire weight of the universe was bearing down on him. The adversary snarled. His figure contorted, but he could not advance. He knew he could not directly challenge the will of God. So, without another word, he retreated, his shadow disappearing into the darkness. The dispute was over, at least for now. Michael remained there in silence, watching the spot where his enemy's shadow had been. He knew this confrontation was not the end, but only one part of something much larger. The adversary may have been defeated in that moment, but the forces of evil never rest. The body of Moses is sealed, and with it, the memory of an eternal covenant, Michael thought. God has spoken, and nothing and no one can change his will. The archangel, with one last look at the hidden tomb of Moses, began his ascent toward the heavens. He knew his mission was far from over. In the vastness of the universe, God's plans continued to unfold, and Michael, ever ready, would be there, defending the sacred and fighting against those who seek to corrupt the divine. Chapter 6. Michael in the Apocalypse. Darkness descended upon the earth, denser and more palpable than ever before. It was not the natural darkness of night, nor the stillness of an eclipse. This was a shadow that dragged with it despair and fear, a sign that the end was near. The heavens ignited with the glare of the final battle, where light and darkness would meet in their ultimate confrontation. In that moment, Michael, the archangel, the chief warrior of God's kingdom, stood at the head of the celestial hosts, awaiting the command that would mark the beginning of the end. The war between good and evil had never been so clear, so imminent. Lucifer, the fallen angel, had gathered his demons, and his army was poised to annihilate all that remained of creation. His rebellion was no longer a whisper in the corners of heaven. It had become an open war, an all-out struggle for the soul of the universe. In the heights, the throne of God shone like a beacon of hope. Michael stood before it, the sword in his hand glowing with the light of 1,000 stars. He was not merely a celestial soldier. He was the commander of God's hosts, the protector of creation. The final battle about to be waged would decide not only the fate of humanity, but the future of everything that had ever been created. Michael! The voice of God resonated in the air, deep and serene. This is the moment. The rebellion of Lucifer and his hosts has reached its climax. The final battle is about to begin. You must lead my angels against the forces of evil. This is the last chance to restore the order and peace I created for you. Michael, his gaze fixed on the throne, nodded, his heart filled with determination. I will do it, Lord, he replied, his voice firm. I will not let chaos destroy what you have created. Lucifer and his followers will not prevail. God, observing his chief warrior, understood the gravity of the moment. Remember, Michael, this battle will not only be physical, it will also be spiritual. The faith of humanity will be put to the test. Men must choose between the light and the darkness. Your victory will depend not only on the celestial forces, but also on the strength that humans have in their hearts. While Michael prepared for battle, Lucifer stood in his dark kingdom, surrounded by his most loyal followers. The abyss of creation, where light never penetrated, had become his domain. There, amidst the shadows, Lucifer observed his army, his face twisted by arrogance and hatred. It is time for dominion over all that God has created to be ours, Lucifer said, his voice echoing in the infernal caverns. We are the true masters of this world. Man has been an imperfect creation, and we must take what belongs to us. The light that God created has corrupted the universe for too long. Darkness will bring true freedom. Around him, his demons murmured, eager for war. Among them, one stood out. His face was dark, and his malevolent smile was as cold as ice. It was Beelzebub, his second in command, whose loyalty to Lucifer was absolute. We will fight to the end, my lord, said Beelzebub. Victory is ours. The fallen angels will rise with us, and nothing can stop us. The throne of God will fall, and we will finally take control of the universe. Lucifer nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the celestial hosts were preparing for the confrontation. The war that was about to begin would not only destroy worlds, but would also bring every soul to the brink of its eternal destiny. The battle began. From the heavens, an army of angels descended with Michael at its head. The celestial light illuminated the darkness that had invaded the world, and the clash between the two sides was an indescribable cataclysm. The hosts of Lucifer, led by Beelzebub, fought with fury, their demons invoking darkness to crush the angels of light. Michael, with his divine sword in hand, fought at the forefront, dismembering demons with every blow. Each celestial angel at his side was an extension of his own will, a resolute warrior who did not hesitate to confront evil in every form. The battle, though monumental, was imbued with a greater purpose. It wasn't just about destroying the enemy, but about saving the human souls still caught in the balance of the struggle. Michael saw how, amidst the conflict, humans began to fall, trapped by the temptations of the demons. Chaos was seizing the earth, and the hearts of many men wavered. Some fell into despair, seeking refuge in the darkness, while others resisted, clinging to the light of faith. In the midst of the battle, an unexpected turn occurred. The humans, those trapped between the two worlds, began to doubt. The adversary, in his cunning, sowed seeds of hopelessness. Why fight? Their voices whispered. Is there truly a purpose in this war? Why choose the light when darkness offers everything the heart desires? Some humans, confused by the enemy's words, began to crumble. The fight for their souls intensified. Michael, seeing this shift, moved to the part of the battlefield where souls were wavering. Do not yield to the lies of evil, Michael cried out, his voice roaring through the air like a celestial thunderclap. The light of God never fails. Though the enemy tempts you with false promises, do not be swayed by the darkness. You have the power to choose, the power to be free. But the doubts persisted. Those who had begun to fall under the influence of evil started to turn against those still fighting for the light, doubting their own faith. Michael the Archangel is a celestial figure who has transcended the simple image of a divine warrior to become an eternal symbol of strength, loyalty, and purity. His example as God's principal warrior goes far beyond the physical struggle against the forces of evil. Through his life and mission, Michael teaches us not only about resilience and courage, but also about unwavering fidelity, humility and victory, and the divine justice that prevails over all. Throughout the Bible and apocryphal texts, Michael is presented not just as a defender of the heavens, but as a role model for all who seek righteousness and truth. If this exploration of his journey has been valuable to you, consider leaving a like so we know you're enjoying it. The first lesson Michael teaches us is the power of unwavering loyalty to God. Throughout the scriptures, particularly in the passages that narrate the war in heaven from Revelation chapter 12, verses 7 to 9. Michael emerges as the valiant leader of the celestial hosts. He is the first to answer the challenge that Lucifer and his followers launched against the divine order. This struggle was not just physical, but spiritual, representing a rebellion against the sovereignty of God. While Lucifer and his fallen angels sought to destroy the divine plan, Michael stood firm in his loyalty to God and his will, demonstrating that no challenge can ultimately break the fidelity of those who serve the Creator. What makes Michael such an exceptional warrior is that his strength comes not from arrogance or a desire for power, but from his complete and absolute devotion to the Creator. He does not fight for himself or for personal glory. Every action he takes, every battle he wages, has a single purpose: the preservation of divine order and the protection of those who remain faithful to God. His example reminds us that true strength is found not in imposing our will, but in aligning our will with God's. Michael's unshakable loyalty to his Creator is a lesson that resonates through the ages, teaching us that no matter how great the difficulties or enemies we face, our true strength lies in our ability to remain faithful to what is just. Michael is not only a faithful warrior, but also a warrior of immeasurable courage. The Apostle Jude mentions a particularly intriguing scene where Michael confronts the adversary in a dispute over the body of Moses. In that account from the first chapter of Jude, verse 9, Michael does not respond with anger or violence. Instead, he relies on God's authority to rebuke the evil one, showing that true courage lies in knowing when to fight and when to surrender to God's will. In this story, Michael acts with a courage not measured in terms of brute force or aggression, but in the wisdom of recognizing that the battle he faces is not just physical, but spiritual. This confrontation with the adversary is a display of humility and courage in its highest form. He knows that although he possesses the power to destroy his enemy, he prefers to let God's will direct the outcome. This act of spiritual courage teaches that the true warrior not only faces challenges with bravery, but also trusts in divine direction, without being carried away by rage or desperation. Michael confronts one of the greatest enemies in the universe, a being who rebelled against God himself, and yet his faith remains intact. Michael's confidence in divine justice and his bravery to fight for what is right are a testament to the power of inner courage that resides in faith. He not only fights against evil, but represents the conviction that in the end, God's justice will prevail. He teaches us that, like him, we must face challenges with courage, and with the assurance that even though our own strength is limited, the will of God will always guide the final result. As the leader of the celestial hosts, Michael is also the defender of divine justice. He doesn't just combat the forces of evil, he embodies the struggle for good, for truth, and for the order that God has established. In the fight against Lucifer, Michael isn't just facing a rebel seeking to usurp God's throne. He is fighting for the preservation of light in a universe threatened by darkness. Michael's role in the book of Revelation underscores his divine mission to preserve order in creation. In this final battle, the struggle is not just for dominion over heaven, but for the protection of all souls who remain faithful to God. Michael's victory over the dragon and his demons marks the restoration of balance in heaven and on earth, a victory that ensures that although evil may have its moment of power, in the end, divine justice will triumph. Michael's example teaches us that true strength lies not just in defeating our enemies, but in defending what is just. It reminds us that being warriors of light doesn't mean fighting for personal power or glory, but being willing to sacrifice our comfort for the truth, even when it means facing the greatest powers of darkness. Michael's strength lies in his ability to stand firm, without wavering in the fight for justice, never being diverted by the lies or promises of evil. Throughout history, Michael has been an example of what it means to have an unshakable faith in the goodness and justice of God. He doesn't act on his own or seek personal glory. He is God's instrument for restoring order, peace, and justice in a chaotic universe. This total trust in God is what gives him his power and his purpose. What do you find most inspiring about Michael's character? Let us know in the comments below. The example of Michael shows us that true strength comes not from our own will, but from our willingness to be instruments of the divine will. Like Michael, we must be warriors, not only in the fight against evil, but also in our readiness to trust completely in God, knowing that He is in control of all that is to come. Michael's strength is not just a reflection of his physical power or his skill in battle, but of his unwavering faith in God's plan. Michael the Archangel is the perfect example of an unbreakable warrior, a model of loyalty, courage, justice, and faith. His story, both in the heavens and on earth, is a testament to what it means to be a defender of the light, a protector of the truth, and an instrument of the divine will. In his ability to fight with courage, to defend what is just, and to maintain his faith in the darkest moments, Michael shows us that true strength is not just physical, but spiritual. By following his example, we learn that the fight for light and justice never stops. That even when we face the greatest challenges, we must press on with the certainty that in the end, victory belongs to God. The strength of Michael is the strength of all who choose to walk in the light, who choose to resist the shadows of evil, and who trust that in the end, divine justice will prevail. We often think of justice as something that must be imposed by human beings. But true justice does not depend on our actions, but on a higher divine order that has a broader perspective than ours. It's like a perfect clock. Every gear has its moment and its reason for being, even if we don't always understand how they connect. When reflecting on divine justice, it's important to understand that it doesn't always manifest immediately. It can be subtle, like a seed that grows slowly, but it always arrives with the certainty that every act has a just consequence. It's not about punishment, but about balancing chaos with harmony. Every life, every action has a purpose in this grand cosmic design. Divine justice reminds us that although evil may seem to prevail at times, there will always be a force that restores balance, allowing truth and good to triumph in the end. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, join our community at True Light by subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Know someone who needs to hear this message? Share this video and help it reach more people. Michael, may God bless you.